My name is Hartley Rosen. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Youth Alliance. The mandate of the organization is to provide meaningful work and volunteer experience for children and youth, working on community, food, and ecology projects. We're at the Copley Community Orchard, which is in East Vancouver. It's a really fantastic neighborhood, and the SkyTrain, runs behind us here. So access to the site is really great in terms of public transit. One of the challenges is most of the site there's very old soil, old fill, and a lot of it was very poorly draining. And so there was several sections in the site that we had to excavate and bring in new material. And so drainage is, I would say, the main problem. Underneath this property is probably an active creek. So yeah, there's a lot of water underneath this property.
Why is drainage important for fruit trees?
Most trees in general, I would say, including fruit trees, don't like to sit in standing water. And if their roots are continually underwater, they basically, not choke, but they just don't thrive. They don't like to have their feet wet at all times. I don't know the science behind that, but there are some trees that do well, like willow in water. Fruit trees are not one of those trees.
Okay, so how do you go about changing the drainage in an area where you want to plant fruit trees?
Well, in this section just over here, what we did is we dug 3 main drainage ditches, and we filled it with 4-inch drain pipe and gravel, and we also stuck huge chunks of old tree stumps and old logs, and filled the drain with that material, so that we created an area that was lower than the rest of the orchard. So theoretically, the water flows downward and hits the drain pipe and flows out of the area. And I think we've had some pretty significant luck with the methods that we've used. This area used to be underwater in the winter from essentially October through March. Since we've created the drainage area with the drain pipes, we haven't had any standing water in this section at all. So here we have a rain garden, and this is the culmination of 3 drainage ditches on the southern part of the property, all coming together into this space here. It's basically a big trench filled with gravel, so if we have a really, really intense storm, the water can move into this space and we can hold it on site instead of having it run off into the street. City of Vancouver was concerned if we did have a big storm that we would start getting water running off the site in and into the storm system, and they didn't want that, so they suggested that we create this type of space here to accommodate all of that water.
Tell me a little bit about the community model here. How is that different?
Right. So right from the beginning, the group that sort of coalesced around this project determined that we didn't want to have sort of the typical allotment idea, like a community garden where each member has one plot that they look after. So I guess for an orchard, we discussed the merits of having members sort of take on one tree, and that would be their tree that they manage. So the group very early determined that we wanted this to be slightly different. We wanted it to be collective decision making. And for us, there was innovation in that idea because while community gardens were taking off, a lot of them had the allotment model, and we wanted to do something slightly different. And the community orchard sort of lends itself to that collective model. So on the eastern side of this property is the space for the community growing area. And we have members that maintain and manage this section over here. The first year in 2012 we had 85 members. This year our numbers were a little smaller. I think we were down to 30 or 35. So yeah, the group comes out and mows and waters, and every month we have a site management committee meeting, and we look at all the trees and see what's going on, and we sort of plan and forecast the activities that need to happen in this space. So here we have a typical Espalier shape where you have one main central leader with branches every 2 feet in a sort of horizontal from the main trunk. And what we're trying to do is create productive spur systems every 6 to 8 inches. So if I was to prune this tree today, I would bring back the new growth to about 1 or 2 sets of leaves and get those spur systems forming.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned having gone through this whole experience?
Well, I mean, Environmental Youth Alliance has several spaces that we maintain, and we use food and ecology to kind of bring people together to learn. This space, though, I've really learned a lot from the trees in terms of needing to be patient, and also fruit trees demand a lot of work. There's, I think people fall in love with the idea and then plant a fruit tree and don't really realize the level of work that's required to maintain them. And I'm not sure why people have that sense. I guess it's because perennial and you plant it and you don't need to plant anything beyond that, like you would for an annual crop. But yeah, you really need to stay on top of disease and pests. Pruning is really crucial. We live in small urban spaces, and we need to be productive with our spaces, and the way to do that is through managing through pruning. In terms of the community piece, it's really important that people feel included, that their voice is heard. Community orchards and gardens, for that matter, are a really great place to learn. It's kind of like a microcosm of our society, and being in groups and group dynamics and conflicts that happen, and it's a really interesting process to go through, and maybe community gardens and orchards are a really effective way for people to learn about these processes, sort of larger governing processes that we have as part of our society. Typically the second crop of figs doesn't ripen here, but there's a couple that have.